Are you guys ready? Let's just fucking jump right into it. Like tomorrow, this is like just like the chaser stream. No, chaser, appetizer. Oh. Yes, this is the chaser stream. This is the chaser video. Tomorrow is the big stream, but today this is like the setup stream. I think I assume some crazy stuff is gonna happen. I don't know where I'm supposed to start again, love. I will double check. There might be a lag. Yes, there was a lag, but tomorrow is gonna be a good damn day. Tomorrow we're finishing. Oh, tomorrow we're reading from 1345 to 1354, but today we are reading from. Wait, what am I reading? Oh yeah, today I'm reading 36 to 44. We're gonna read 8 solid banger chapters. Tomorrow we finish volume 7. Tomorrow we do our volume 7 author notes. Tomorrow, if Wiz is free, we do our volume 7 discussion back to back before I even publish the volume 6 discussion. Crazy. And then if we're and then we watch the PlayStation State of Play because I have been coping for Kingdom Hearts 4 for fucking 5 damn years. Tomorrow's only JP games. Square Enix makes Kingdom Hearts. That's a JP game. I think it's gonna happen. Maybe we'll even get Dragon Quest 12. You know, maybe I'm feeling a little hopium. Tomorrow's gonna be a good day. And then after we pump out like 8 Where the Winds Meet videos, oh my god, I can't speak right now. Then, if I'm feeling crazy, we might do volume 8. You guys are really telling me not to. I lied. I probably won't do it because what I do want to do, I want to go back and screen record some of my old videos or some of my old reactions, kind of add that. If not at the beginning of volume 8, towards like the end of our final volume 8 video. But it's like, guys, like here's the thing, man. It's like I want to keep reading, but now you guys are telling me not to read. Like, what's going on here? Who made an error in the laws of the world? Like, what is going on here? When I want to read more, you guys told me to slow down. Oh my god! All right, we'll see what happens. Can I at least read like a chapter? Like, what if I read like 1 chapter, you know, like something? I think something would be good. No, we'll find out. I know you guys have been telling me I need brain power for volume 8, but like here's the thing, man. Tomorrow we unlock our Mangekyo Sharingan, bro. Like I'm telling you, tomorrow we're gonna unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan and then fully comprehend everything. It's gonna be like third eye, everything is gonna unlock tomorrow, man. Like tomorrow it's like we like fully digested the streamer potion and we're finally ready. We'll see. You're gonna melt your brain trying to read volume 8. You guys are hyping me up a little. All right, you guys ready? Let's start, man. Let's start with interaction. Chapter 1336 is called Interaction. Backland Steam Locomotive Station, Platform 3. Alfred chatted with his parents and sister for a while before rushing to leave the train during the... I wish he actually found out how strong, like, fucking Susie and Audrey were. That would have been such a funny interaction. He came to the platform and said to his squire, "Give me an East Ballam cigarette." Ooh, we are lagging. Uh-oh. He came to the platform, said to the squire, "Give me an East Ballam cigarette. If the past few years have any negative impacts on him other than his mental suffering and pain, he still retained a few bad habits. After smoking plenty of East Ballam cigarettes that consisted of spicy and herbs wrapped in roasted tobacco leaves, Alfred was no longer used to the paper cigarettes that remained popular in the northern continent. He believed that they were bland and tasteless, as though they were liquor diluted with water. As for cigars, he felt that it needed a good environment to slowly savor it. It didn't suit his present situation. Of course, if his smoking addiction wasn't too serious, a disciplinary paladin had a good enough constitution and a spirit to resist such influences. Alfred came to the platform to smoke because he felt that it was too stuffy in the train carriage. Besides, his mother often raised the issue of him not being married. As for the squire took it out and lit the East Ballam cigarette. Alfred brought the stick to his nearly charred black to his mouth and sucked it deeply. I'm surprised we're speaking of a cigarette. I thought all this stuff was censored, and like that's why in the Dunqua, like you only ever see Dun like kind of like light the tobacco, or like he sniffs it, but he's never inhaling it. The strong smell entered his body, causing his spirit to jolt. At this moment, he saw a blonde-haired man who looked like a classic sculpture walking over with his valet. Alfred hesitated and smiled. He raised his right hand and said, "Hybert, I thought you wouldn't be returning to Eastchester." It was Earl Hall's eldest son, Alfred brother, Lord Hybert Hall. Hybrid drew a perfect smile and said, I'm just a cabinet secretary, not the cabinet chief secretary. I won't be busy that I don't even have the weekend off. In fact, he had no plans on being a cabinet chief secretary either. His main goal was to accumulate experiences at the various departments in the government and build up his own networks and resources to prepare for entering the House of the Lords in the future. Alfred took another puff of the East Balm cigarette and smiled. Happy weekend. After watching Hybrid enter the carriage, Alfred sensed that someone was looking over and was discussing. Why aren't there any passengers waiting for the train carriage? It doesn't seem too full. Huh. That's a special carriage. If it was pre-booked by an important figure for a large sum of money, I know that you might not have seen such a situation before, but you have to remember that this happens frequently in big cities like in Backland and Constant. When those important figures bring this entire family out, they will definitely have more than 100 servants follow. Perhaps there might even be pets, so how can they squeeze in a train carriage with ordinary people? Is that so? I wonder who is this big shot. Alfred turned his head to look. There were dozens of people in gray-blue uniforms on the platform who were quietly surveying Platform 3 across the empty tracks. The distance between the two parties wasn't small. If Alfred's hearing was outstanding, he wouldn't be able to figure out what they were discussing. Alfred turned to ask his adjutant, I still can't pronounce this word. He could only recognize that the uniform they were wearing belonged to a railway company. The adjutant turned around immediately and asked the staff at the platform. Soon he jogged back and whispered to Alfred, General, they're train dispatchers from all over Kingdom. They're undergoing short-term training in Backland. Alfred nodded slightly and glanced at the platform again. The oldest of the train dispatchers had white hair and the youngest looked to be in their early 20s. Most of them were middle-aged men in their 30s. I forgot to turn the light, sorry. Most of them were middle-aged men in their 30s or their 40s with gray sideburns. In the Sonia Sea of Generosity Bayham, Verdu carried his luggage, which didn't contain many valuables, and boarded the boat at night. He left the harbor and boarded a pirate ship. As a Sequence 7 of the Apprentice Pathway, he wasn't very good at combat, and even though Verdu had a mystical item with him, he was rather afraid of its negative effects. He wasn't willing to use it unless it was critical to do so. Therefore, in order to avoid danger, he tried his best not to bring anything that would easily attract the greed of pirates, which he didn't trust. The pirate on the deck glanced at Verdu and scoffed. There's no need to be afraid. We always keep our promises. As long as you pay for the journey, we definitely won't throw you into the sea. Here it'll be even safer, and you're taking a passenger ship. At least you don't have to worry about encountering pirates. Seeing Verdu silent as though he appeared somewhat afraid, the pirate gleefully threw a key at him. The second floor on deck, the room at the end, Verdu caught the brass key and entered the cabin. He climbed up the stairs and headed down the corridor. This level seemed to be specifically prepared for the people who boarded the pirate ship for various reasons. Along the way, Verdu encountered a few passengers that were totally unlike pirates. Among them was a street girl who was dressed rather scantily, a middle-aged man with a protruding belly and oily faces, an extremely cold young man wearing a cloak and a top hat. Do you want to join me? The lady smiled and asked when she saw Verdu looking over. She fluttered her eyes at him and she asked. It was very clear if she was planning to do some business on the trip or if she was doing businesses while happening to make a trip. Verdu ignored her and withdrew her gaze before walking to the room. That well-defined and cold young man also stopped at the entrance diagonally opposite, Backland Westboro 9 Bellantone Street. Come in. Shio straightened her body from the huge white seat. The door cracked open and the two MI9 members who were under Shio walked in. Colonel, we found some information regarding the investigation of Utopia. Oh, you don't say. A man in a dark-colored jacket handed Shio a report. Shio was startled as she perked up. What is it? The man in a dark-colored jacket simply said, in the past few days, we took advantage of the free time we had from completing our previous missions to visit all the passengers in Backland from the particular steam locomotive through our informants. Without a doubt, he was referring to the steam locomotive that happened to stop at Utopia. Okay, Shio nodded and gestured for her subordinates to continue. The man in a deep jacket pointed the report and said, we have preliminary confirmations that none of the passengers that successfully arrived in Backland showed any abnormalities. They're in good spirits and have no problems with their memories. However, we discovered something at that time. Not everyone returned to the train. According to the two passengers, their neighbors chose to remain in Utopia. Oh. One was a lady who loves traveling and exploration. She has a deep love for foreign places. After witnessing the outstanding red wines, deserts, and unique fizzling iced tea in Utopia, she decided to give up on her original plans and stay in a small, unique city for a while longer. to discover even more wonderful things. The two passengers learned about this when they were chatting with her. Not only did they share neighboring seats, they also chose to stay in the same hotel they met in the morning. That hotel happened to be the same one our intelligence agency stayed in. It's called Iris's. Shio slowly nodded and said, have you investigated the latest situation? What's her name? No, we can't be sure if she has left Utopia. Answer the other MI9 member with a busty goatee? Oh my god. Those two passengers only know that the lady's name is Monica, but they don't know her last name or background. Chio tearfully acknowledged, your subsequent mission is to investigate the lady's background, find her family and friends, and confirm if she has returned. Yes, Colonel. The two MI9 personnel saluted and left Chio's office. Chio read the report that they submitted and sighed silently. Compared to her subordinates, she was actually closer to the truth of Utopia. She already knew that it was a ritual that had a certain connection with German Sparrow. However, she had no way reporting this news for her superiors for credit. Without mentioning the origins of the information, Shio needed to consider whether German Sparrow was willing to let this news leak out. Perhaps I can try contacting German Sparrow and ask him for his opinion. Yo, happy birthday, Adam. Shio tidied her desk in thought and left MI9. After changing her clothes, she returned to East Borough and the bridge area. She headed to different bars, just like back in her bounty hunter days, to gather all sorts of information from different people. During this process, she asked about Utopia in passing, but no one had heard of it. Finally, Shio entered a bar located in Backland Bridge area and sat on a high stool. She said to the bartender, anyone suspicious recently? A lot of people are suspicious, but they don't have any bounty. The bartender replied casually. Shio circled around the topic for more information, and when done, she asked according to the plan, have you heard of Utopia? I've heard of it. The bartender replied as he wiped the glass. Shio moved her gaze from the bar counter up slowly. She looked at the bartender and asked, where from? There was a guest who came earlier and he controlled his drinking. The bartender said indifferently, I promoted our specialty cocktail to him. He said that he has other things to do, so he could only drink a glass of beer. I praised him and asked where he came from. He said Utopia. Wendell had just finished his breakfast when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, he saw a police officer in a black and white checkered uniform standing outside. He opened the door in puzzlement. May I ask what's the matter? Wendell asked politely. This house was a place he had been assigned to after coming to Backland. This was because he would be staying in the city for quite some time, receiving internal investigations and monitoring. The police officer was still young and a little inexperienced. He was only in his early 20s. He forced a smile and said to Wendell, hello, I'm Billy's, a police officer. There's a case that requires you to provide testimony in court. What case? Wendell frowned slightly. Utopia. The young policeman named Billy said with a polite smile, it's the Tracy homicide case in Utopia. Wendell's eyes widened. I'm sorry. Did she leave? Music changed in the next chapter. Bet. Thank you. Chapter 1337. Music changed at the end of chapter. I remember, Campty. When we get back to Verdu, a chain reaction. At that moment, Wendell felt his calves tremble slightly, almost like the chain of screaming. Did any of you guys understand that reference? At that moment, Wendell felt his calves tremble slightly, as if he could no longer support the weight of his body. After leaving Utopia, he had anticipated the worst possible outcome. Suddenly, death was no explicable reason. However, he never expected that he would meet someone from Utopia in Backland, a real large city. What the fuck is the marionette doing here? More importantly, the visitor had even invited him to Utopia. To Wendell, this was an extremely scary nightmare. Him not experiencing a mental breakdown could only be attributed to his good mental fortitude. Keeping his composure, Wendell forced a troubled expression and said, I have plenty of things to do recently. The police officer named Billy immediately said, the trial will happen in 2 weeks. Here's the subpoena. If he spoke, he handed the documents to Wendell. Frankly speaking, Wendell didn't want to accept it at all, but he had no choice but to accept it. Billy took a step back. This concerns the future of a lady. I sincerely hope that you can testify in court. It depends on the situation. Wendell didn't want to agree or refuse. Billy didn't say anything else as he bowed. I'll wait for you in Utopia. I hope we meet again. Whoa. I'm scrolling down way too much. I hope we meet again. With that said, he turned around and left the residence, entering the street. Throughout the entire process, Wendell seemed to have been frozen into an ice sculpture, standing there without blinking. After another 10 seconds, he finally woke up from his nightmare. He collapsed to the side weakly and held himself up by placing his right hand to the door. Just now, he had been so afraid that Billy's would forcefully bring him back to the non-existing Utopia. If that happened, Wendell didn't know if he still had a chance to leave. Perhaps he would have disappeared forever. Compared to the sudden death, the impossible to predict but clearly negative outcome left him even more fearful. I need to quickly report this matter to the brass, capture the police from Utopia, and find out the real situation of this bizarre town and a suitable way to resolve the problem completely. Wendell snapped back to his senses and tried his best to perk himself up. He was prepared to inform MI9 members who were secretly monitoring him. At this moment, he finally realized that there was a huge problem with his response. He didn't grab the opportunity to inform his monitoring colleagues with a hand gesture that the police officer who had visited him was problematic. He didn't try to stall for time either. Instead, he waited for the monitors to realize that something was wrong. He also didn't show his talent as an intelligence agent, asking superstitiously Billy's which hotel he stayed in Backland and what day he was settling off by train. He was so terrified that he could only subconsciously use a response that wouldn't create an accident. With that thought in mind, Wendell walked out of the door and looked in the direction where Billy's had left, but he didn't even see his figure. This police officer from Utopia had already blended into the carriages and pedestrians. Retracting his gaze, Wendell looked down at the subpoena in his hand and suddenly felt a little uneasy. What will happen if I don't go to Utopia to testify 2 weeks later? The more Wendell thought about it, the more scared he became. His calves weakened again, and he hurriedly made a hand gesture to inform his colleagues that there was hiding around him of the anomaly. Westboro 9 Bellantone Street. After learning that Utopia residents had arrived in Backland, Shio was both shocked and confused. According to her previous observations, Utopia was likely located in a secret location or somewhere between real and illusionary, allowing outsiders to enter through random entrances. Oh, someone's onto it. As for why they wanted outsiders to enter, it was probably a ritual requirement. Therefore, according to Shio's understanding, the people of Utopia likely wouldn't leave their hometown and wander around. This is also a ritual requirement. What's the true identity of these residents? Mr. Fool's believers, the world German Sparrow's companions. After Shio asked about the general appearance of Utopia visitors, she had no choice but to return to MI9's headquarters due to the lack of further information. She hesitated on whether she would send her subordinates to perform a large-scale search. She wasn't sure if Mr. World would be happy to see such actions being taken, as she was afraid of affecting the ritual. After pacing back and forth in the office, Shio prepared to pray to Mr. Fool and ask him to transfer her questions to the world German Sparrow. As she walked to the chair, Shio swept her gaze across the report placed on the table. It was an investigation report that her two subordinates had prepared. On the other hand, they had confirmed that there were no problems with the passengers that successfully arrived in Backland. On the other hand, they had pointed out that there were passengers who had remained in Utopia. Passengers, Shio narrowed her eyes as she made a guess based on her intuition that Utopia inhabitants had their own goals in coming to Backland, and it wasn't for a random trip. And his goal is very likely related to a particular passenger who had left Utopia. Imagine it's Elliot using Easy as a virtual persona. That'd be funny. It was me all along. It's like the Almabella Lilith meme with Dio. He thought it was Easy, but it was Ellie. Shio was alarmed as she hurriedly sat down and attempted to pray. Just then, someone knocked on her office door. Please come on in, Shio said after some hesitation. As the door opened, Shio saw the goated Locke and Wendell, who was in charge of Utopia incidents. Colonel Wendell met someone from Utopia. He paid him a visit directly. Locke said, fumbling over his words. This development was equally unexpected. Indeed, Shio wasn't surprised and said she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at Wendell and asked, why did he visit you? Her request that I head to Utopia to testify about the homicide case I mentioned in my report. Wendell was clearly calmer than before. He then added, he's a policeman, name's Billy's. I don't dare ask where he was living, and I don't know what he's planning to leave or which steam locomotive he's planning on taking to leave. To express the weight she had on his matter, Shio stood up and thought, Locke, summon your team members to look for the rental carriage drivers who often prowl for customers around Wendell's residence, as well as the carriage drivers who passed by the nearby district, and ask if they seen Billy's before. If they had seen him, ask them where he was sent to. Also send someone to the steam locomotive station and wait by the entrance to observe the passengers. After instructing her subordinates, she turned to look at Wendell. Cooperate with them and sketch out Billy's. Yes, Colonel. Locke and Wendell replied in unison. After they left and closed the door, Shio sat back down and began to pray. Soon she received Mr. Fool's response and saw the world German Sparrow praying in the gray fog. German Sparrow told her, you can carry out normal investigations. When necessary, you can suggest that it's a ritual, but it must be included among the few options. She immediately heaved a sigh of relief as she patiently waited for her subordinates to report the results of their investigations. As night fell, Locke returned to the Bellantone Street and reported to Shio, we found the rental carriage driver that took Utopian's business. business. No, you're not that late. No, it's okay. We're on the second chapter, Alma. Oh, Shio showed her concern. That Locke explained simply that Utopian originally got the carriage driver to go at the dock area. However, as soon as the carriage entered the corresponding area, he requested to get off, saying that day had arrived. That street was very unfamiliar to the carriage driver, making him feel like he was lost. After leaving that street, he realized that his surroundings had become familiar. Our man accompanied him to that place again, but he couldn't find the street no matter what. Shio nodded slightly and said solemnly, "It matches our preliminary descriptions regarding the entrance and access to Utopia. Colonel, are you saying that the one can enter or leave Utopia from any city and street?" Locke was in disbelief. Shio thought for a moment before saying, "From the looks of it, yes, but I have a feeling that there's something wrong, huh?" Oh, music change? No, yeah, Verdu. Yeah, with Verdu. Huh, how does Utopia connect to different places? What does it rely on? And we're almost done with the chapter, so I know, once we go to Verdu. As her voice trailed off, Shio said to Locke, "Tell Wendell that he'll spend the following 2 weeks here until the subpoena expires." "Yes, Colonel." Locke turned around and left Shio's office. Wendell didn't have any objections to Colonel DeReach's arrangements. He couldn't even say that he would only feel safe inside MI9's headquarters. His temporary residence was simply refurbished duty room. Through the window, he could see the lawn, garden, and tree outside. At a glance, Wendell saw a pitch-black raven standing on a tree branch, silently looking over. Night and Bansi was abnormally creepy from time to time. Oh, is this Verdu? I think it is, because it was a POV change. I see Verdu. Yeah, POV change. Night and Bansi was abnormally creepy from time to time, but the cries of ravens or the other seabirds could be heard. Verdu stood at the window, watching the approaching dilapidated dock and the city that had already been reduced to ruins. Oh, yeah, the city that's been reduced. I thought I read something else. Yes. Oh shit, are we finally gonna see the remains of Bansi? What the fuck? That's been like, it's been destroyed since the end of volume 3 or the end of volume 4. It's been a cool minute. Night in Bansi was abnormally creepy. From time to time, the cries of ravens or the other seabirds could be heard. Verdu stood at the window, watching the approaching dilapidated dock in the city that had already been reduced to ruins. The pressure in his heart grew. After a few days at sea, the ship he boarded was about to reach Bansi Harbor. The captain had already informed Verdu in the morning that they would only wait for 2 hours. If he exceeded the 2 hours, Verdu could only wait for the next ship on the deserted island. Who knew when the next ship would come? Probably never. After taking a deep breath, Verdu retracted his gaze and took off his coat. Then he opened his suitcase, took out a classical black robe, and put it on. The surface of the robe was embroidered with golden and silver threads, and there were many gems the size of rice grains attached to it. It was a sealed artifact of the Abraham family. After making preparations, Verdu left the pirate ship and entered the Bansi harbor. Along the way, the ancient robe tightening, causing his face to turn purple as he nearly fainted. As they walked, Verdu found the spot where the telegraph office stood based on the map he had bought. In the middle of the rubble, there were 2 bloody red marks, one that remained fresh. Ooh, okay. It was as if they were left behind after 2 were crushed in the minced meat. Based on the 2 figures, one on a broken wall, there was an octopus head monster wearing armor. It stood on the waves and was holding a trident. Verdu raised his lantern in his hand high and was about to take a closer look when he suddenly felt a drop of cold liquid land on his neck. Gripped with terror, he subconsciously reached out his hand. He found it sticky, nothing like rain. It was colorless, not blood. It's a little similar to saliva. Verdu's forehead twitched slightly as he slowly raised his head to look at the place where the drop of liquid could have dripped from. It was a swath of pitch black. It was a night sky without... Wait, what the fuck am I reading? It was a swath of pitch black. It was a night sky without the moon or stars. I mean, if like, the only thing I can think of, if it's a trident, I'm thinking of Lords of Storms. Like Leodero. Is that what that is? But no, it didn't say it was a giant. We know that painting is Leodero already. Okay, so it was Leodero. Okay, hell fucking yeah. Look at that. I remember. There you go. You see, look, I got a good memory. Chapter 1338 is called Exploration. Verdu subconsciously swallowed his saliva, feeling an indescribable sense of fear. He didn't know what he was afraid of. There wasn't any real danger, yet a drop of unknown liquid falling from above was enough to chill his spine and tighten his pores. Perhaps it was because that environment was too eerie and silent, or perhaps it was because the identity of an unknown origins of liquid. Verdu, oh, I forgot to update this. Verdu cautiously moved 2 steps outside and patiently observed. In the next few minutes, nothing abnormal happened. No more liquid fell from above. This made Verdu suspect that it was only a bird passing by. There was freshwater fish from island streams or a sea fish in its mouth, and a slightly sticky liquid dripping from its surface. He calmed himself and then checked on the ruins of the telegraph office. 10 minutes later, Verdu confirmed that there was only traces of blood and simple mirrors that were related to mysticism. It was worth researching. He didn't rashly extract samples of blood-colored soil or to make copies of the strange mural. Instead, he took out a pure, dreamy crystal ball from his pocket. As an astrologer, he naturally had to use his best techniques to confirm if he should take action. Holding the crystal ball in his left hand, his right hand touched the top of the crystal ball as Verdu entered the state of an astrologer. In the next second, the crystal ball shone brightly. Bang. It exploded and scattered shards in every direction. Verdu's gaze froze. He stood rooted to the ground, completely ignoring the pain brought to him by the shards piercing into his body. It exploded. It actually exploded. He's chill, right? He didn't die? He's good? He muttered to himself in disbelief. The crystal ball shards that stabbed into his body didn't seem to break through the classic rope. At that moment, they fell without any blood on them. Oh, he's good. The crystal ball shards that stabbed into his body didn't seem to break through the classic rope. At that moment, they fell without any blood on them. Of course, there were a few shards left on Verdu's jaws and face, preparing them with small wounds. Who is it? Verdu suddenly came to his senses and turned to face another direction. In the ruins opposite of him, a figure walked out. It was a woman in scantily clad clothes from the pirate ship. She had hidden herself very well and wasn't discovered by Verdu. However, the explosion from the crystal ball gave her a fright and made her react excessively, causing her to fail to maintain her hidden state. Verdu's injured face immediately twisted. Why are you here? The lady curled her lips and put on an indifferent attitude. This is Bantu Harbor, not your home. Why can't I be here? I felt bored and came down. Who the fuck is this? I felt bored and came back to take a stroll, hoping to pick up some jewelry from the ruins. Is there any problem with that? She retorted with a few questions without any intention of distracting herself from Verdu. Verdu didn't argue with her. He took out the medicine and medical alcohol and had it prepared beforehand and treated his facial and chin injuries. He then pulled out the crystal ball shards and put them back into his pocket. He didn't want his blood to remain in such a strange place. Following that, Verdu pulled out an accessory of the classic robe. It was a door-shaped symbol formed from 3 rubies, 3 emeralds, and 3 diamonds. In that instant, the long rope tightening, accentuating the flesh of Verdu's body. Just as Verdu's bones were about to be crushed, his vigor gradually faded as he disappeared. Then he teleported to the coastal mountain outside of Bantu Harbor. The mountain had collapsed and turned into rubble. According to what Verdu knew, this was once the place where Bantu residents used to worship the god of weather. It was also the main target of the Church of Storms. As the ball crystal exploded to warn him that Bantu Telegraph Office was hiding an unknown danger, Verdu didn't dare to continue exploring the area or search for mysticism materials. He could only forcibly move to the next location, and this allowed him to escape with the woman sailing. As soon as Wilder's figures appeared, he bent down and took a deep breath. It was as if he had finally recovered from his suffocating state. At the same time, Verdu felt a sharp pain in his right rib, as if a bone had fractured. After taking several deep breaths, he endured the pain and walked a few steps forward with sweat on his forehead, arriving at the altar marked on the map. Without a doubt, the altar had been destroyed. There was only a glassified, slightly charred crater. There was gravel with different shapes scattered around. The gravel had traces of being engulfed in fire and lightning to various degrees. After Verdu Abraham surveyed the area, he raised his right hand and waved his sleeves. With a whoosh, a small portion of the gravel was pushed away from the spot, revealing the ground beneath it. This was a Trickmaster's wind trick. Verdu used it to replace the needle for manual labor to fully ensure his safety. As the gravel flew, Verdu saw the charred ground. There were a few spots left in some areas that had extremely incomplete pattern drawings and symbols. Woo. My sound effects for woo is so bad. Woo. The sound of the wind grew more intense as it resonated in Verdu's ears, causing him to look up in surprise. The wind that could only blow small gravel had something turned into a hurricane, and it even pushed him into a state of staggering about. Wild clouds gathered in the sky as if a storm was brewing. Although he had heard that Bansi was a weather museum, he had never thought that the changes would happen so suddenly. For a split second, Verdu suspected that his wind trick had triggered a storm, or perhaps it had caused some changes that cleared ruins on the altar. This guess made his forehead break out into a cold sweat. As the storm raged, Verdu saw the rubble in front of him fly up, revealing a boulder that was buried underneath. The surface of the boulder was crisscrossed with deep cracks, giving off a feeling that it would shatter once it was touched. At that moment, the wind had calmed down, but the heavy rain was still brewing. Thinking about how he was already Bansi Harbor and couldn't afford to be scared off just like that, he mustered up his courage and approached the boulder, covering in charred black cracks. Ooh, definitely fire. He took out a magnifying glass that was engulfed with strange patterns, and he seriously checked the state of the boulder. 7 to 8 minutes later, Verdu put away the magnifying glass, a mystical item, and sighed in regret and dismay. He had already confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the boulder. It didn't involve anything related to mysticism. Verdu was about to retract his gaze and leave when he suddenly saw that at the interior of the boulder's bottom and the earth, bright retinas seeped. The bright retinas gradually expanded like blood flowing out. However, it didn't spread into a huge area. It was limited to a very small area. The two blooded red figures in the telegraph office ruins instantly flashed across Verdu's mind. His scalp couldn't help but tingle. His lips quickly turned to dry as he instinctively thought that this wasn't a good development. After swallowing another mouthful of saliva, Verdu raised his right hand and created another gust of wind, causing quite a number of miniature rocks to roll over to fill the bottom of the boulder, completely covering up the bright retinas that seeped out. He didn't stay here any longer. He forced himself to activate teleportation again and headed for the final destination. This time, another one of his ribs fractured again, causing him to almost faint from pain. In addition to the suffocation caused by the tightening, Verdu felt that he was hovering around the edge of death. He took several seconds to recover and cast his gaze forward. This place was also in ruins, a collapsed house covered in weeds. According to a pirate who had once explored the ruins in Bansi, I assume we're talking about Olger, there was an item here worth researching. It was an ordinary wooden door, but it was the only thing that remained intact in Bansi. The pirate didn't find anything special about the wooden door, so he got his subordinate to carry it in an attempt to move it back to the ship. However, they had only taken 2 steps when they suddenly collapsed. Dragging their spines, their heads separated from their bodies and rolled to the side. Oh, okay. This frightened the pirates. He didn't dare to stay any longer and led the rest of the crew away in a hurry. This is so funny. Yeah, I remember when their heads were separated in Volume 3 when we were fighting in Bansi Harbor. Verdu didn't fully believe that the story that the other party had told him, although he hadn't experienced much life at sea. He knew that the sailors liked to exaggerate, often exaggerating something several times. However, even if it was an exaggeration, Verdu believed that the door was worth studying. After a round of searching, he discovered his target. The ordinary-looking wooden door was leaning against a collapsed wall with brass locks and handles. There were no corpses around, nor were there any traces of blood. It was identical to the majority of the ruins. Indeed, he exaggerated, Perhaps a pirate heard about this wooden door from somewhere else. Both he and his subordinates didn't dare to move it. Verdu looked around and suddenly asked, "Who is it? Why are you monitoring me?" He actually didn't notice anyone around him, but based on his experience and lessons, he could use words and a reaction to deceive the possible presence of a monitor. A second later, a middle-aged man with a belly appeared in the shadows. He said nothing and suddenly left the place. Verdu heaved a sigh of relief and didn't waste any time to approach the wooden door. I'm kind of scared for I'm kind of scared for Verdu to approach the door. Like, I wonder what the fuck is going to happen to him right here. Oh, no, I scrolled down too much. Approach the door. Oh, shit. And approach the wooden door. According to the information he had obtained, no matter which way he opened the wooden door, it wouldn't bring about any abnormal changes. There would be no danger if he didn't attempt to move it. After thinking for a few seconds, Verdu retracted his hand into his shelf and used his classical robe as a glove to pull the wooden door up. He raised the wooden door and the surroundings fell silent. Verdu pushed the wooden door like he was normally opening a door, but there were no changes. He tried many other methods, but he failed to make the wooden door display any abnormalities. It seemed to have just been lucky to be preserved in its entirety under the bombardment of the Church of the Lords of Storms. Strike? Why are we striking? He tried many other methods, but he failed to make the wooden door display any abnormalities. It seems to have just been lucky to be preserved in its entirety under the bombardment of the Church of the Lords of Storms. Taking a deep breath, Verdu tried to calm himself down. He thought for a moment and tried to open the door again. However, unlike before, he held the hand and gently twisted it down. After hearing the light click of the metal colliding, Verdu pushed the wooden door backwards and let it lean against a collapsed wall. This time, a grayish-white fog appeared before Verdu. Okay. In the fog, there was a faintly discernible street and a row of terraces. I'm sorry, did we just end up in Utopia? What's going on here? Was the door grafted and now we just went straight to Utopia? Outside one of the houses, there was a wooden signboard, one of them with a few Lowness words, Bansi Harbor Telegraph Office. With Verdu's people's dilated, the convoys, so it is Bansi Harbor. Wait, so now it's intact? So we were like in the destroyed ruins of Bansi. We go through the wooden door that was like one of the only things intact. Don't worry, easy. Client wouldn't let an innocent in danger. I don't know, man. I'm kind of scared. I feel like that is going to happen at one point. But like maybe accidental, right? I don't know if it'd be unintentional. While Verdu's pupils dilated, a calm voice sounded from the telegraph office that was shrouded in the fog. Are you here to send a telegram? Please come in. Oh shit, that was the end of the chapter. Behind the door. Okay. Chapter 1339 is called Behind the Door. Is Mr. Door. No, I'm kidding. Although the voice coming from the telegraph office wasn't anything out of the ordinary, it was just a little intermediate. It lacked the obvious changes in tone. Normally, it would strike terror in others, but Verdu's heart suddenly erupted with a surge of fear. It was like a bullet with flames shooting into an ammunition dump. It accurately hit a barrel of flammable gunpowder and ignited the fear that Verdu had accumulated and suppressed previously. The horror that swept into every corner of his body was like a hand that grabbed Verdu's heart and blanketed out his brain. He turned around abruptly and ran frantically towards the remnant pier where the pirate ship was. During this process, Verdu had completely forgotten to think. He didn't remember wearing a classical robe that could teleport. All he did was run through the ruins with his feet. He's just forgetting to teleport. That's kind of funny. Read the end of COI today. Bet. We're just gonna steal the distance between 1339 and the last chapter. Check this out. With his feet running, occasionally tripping over random items and falling heavily to the ground. Sometimes his face would turn purple from tightening clothes, and he had no choice but to stop to catch his breath. However, every time he composed himself a little, he would crawl up and continue running. He looked like he had lost his rationality and was acting purely on instinct. Without the force he provided, the wooden door couldn't maintain its balance. It slid down from the collapsed wall and fell to the floor, covered with bricks. The grayish-white fog and the shadowy houses disappeared. After 5 minutes, Verdu ran back to the pier under the storm. His eyes were wide open, filled with panic and confusion. He didn't notice that there was a figure standing on the deck of the pirate ship, quietly looking down at him. This was a young man wearing a half-top hat and a long black trench coat. He had a cold expression. Verdu didn't even think about it and immediately used the gangway to return to the pirate ship. He rushed into the cabin and rushed to the second floor. Who was that? Before rushing into the room, bang, he slammed the door shut and curled up on a small, narrowed bed. He wrapped himself tightly with the blankets and shivered. Oh, he's scared? When another of his ribs fractured again, the excruciating pain struck him and he finally recovered from his horror. He realized that his limbs were sore and his body was hot. Even every breath he took was like thunder. He struggled with all his might, and finally he took off his classic robe and fell back into his bed. He felt dizzy and nauseous. The air just felt insufficient. Outside of the cabin, the cold-looking man suddenly raised his hand. He took out a human-skinned glove and wore it on his left palm. Suddenly, the man vanished into thin air and appeared in the corner of the ruins. He appeared beside the ordinary wooden door. He bent down and raised the wooden door, allowing it to stand in front of the collapsed wall. Right on the heels of that, the man in the black trench coat mimicked Verdu's actions. He reached out for the hull and twisted it downwards. Then he pushed the wooden door and frowned and let it lean against the wall. Almost at the same time, he saw a grayish-white fog. He saw the faintly discernible streets and houses in the fog. Amidst the house, and clearly most eye-catching one, was Banshee Harbor Telegraph Office. The rest were more or less blurry. At this moment, the calm voice in the telegraph office asked through the door, "Who are you?" "I am German Sparrow." The young man, it was? Okay, so it was Klein. "I'm German Sparrow." The young man in a half-top hat replied in the same staccato. I've never said that word before. The interior of Banshee Harbor Telegraph Office suddenly fell silent, as though someone was walking silently towards the door. At that moment, German Sparrow turned his head to the other side. In the deep end of the street, a figure walked over. He was wearing a straw hat and had a towel around his neck. He was bending over to pull something. As the figure approached, the outline of the object behind him gradually became clear. It was a black vehicle with 2 wheels. It had a roof that could block the scorching sun and rays. In the vehicle sat a lady wearing a waist-length dress with an embroidered fan. Both she and the driver were concealed by the thick fog, making it difficult for anyone to see their exact appearances. When they passed German Sparrow, he barely managed to see a few details through the fog. The hunched man pulling the carriage had a rotten face with pale yellow pus flowing. In the areas where the lady wasn't covered by the fan and clothes, his skin was swollen with a glistening amidst many blue and black spots. With a ring, a bell sounded. A blue train with 2 carriages sped out from in front of German Sparrow. At this moment, German Sparrow realized there was an iron black track on the ground. Above him were long lines. On top of the train of the carriages, there was another rather complicated metal frame that slid over the long lines. Through the glass window on the train, German Sparrow saw the passengers inside. They faced the streets, but only their heads remained. Each head was dragging a blood spine. German Sparrow's pupils dilated as he silently watched the scene without moving for a long time. After nearly a minute, he took a step forward in an attempt to enter the blurry street behind the grayish-white fog. However, the fog blocked him. No matter what method he used, he couldn't pass through it. The white fog blocked German Sparrow. 15 minutes later, Gurmitsbro stopped his attempts and closed the wooden door, eliminating the fog. Then he dragged the wooden door and teleported directly to the pirate ship. He wasn't worried about being cursed at all. He then placed the wooden door on the deck and reached out his left hand again to grab the door handle. Suddenly, there was a crackling sound from Gurmitsbro's neck. His head seemed to be raised by an invisible hand, and it dragged out a bloody spine. Ugh! So his head is being split. Gurmitsbro's expression didn't change as he cuddly raised his right hand and pressed it above his head, pressing his head back to its original position. Immediately after, he turned his handle as though unaffected and pushed the wooden door open again. So weird. Allowing it to lean against the shipboard. However, this time, there was no grayish-white fog to be seen, nor were there any visible streets, houses, or trains. It could be said that there was nothing unusual, and the next second, the wooden door rapidly decayed, turning into a pile of mud. Oh, shit. As if it was trying to avoid the fate of being tested. Gurmitsbro didn't stop. He took out a golden ring. Oh, I thought it was a golden coin. I thought he was going to flick it. He took out a golden ring, embedded with a ruby, and wore it for nearly 10 seconds. After the ring vanished, I'm sorry, isn't this the same ring Emblem has? The one that was given to him? He had a golden ring with a ruby gem. No, it might have been something else. After the ring vanished, Gurmitsbro reached out with his right hand and pulled out the same ordinary wooden door from the void before continuing his attempts. After confirming the wooden door would lose its effects once it left Banty, Gurmitsbro casually waved his hand and allowing it to vanish in midair. 2 hours later, the dark clouds in the sky gradually dissipated. The storms that had been brewing for a long time ultimately did not descend. With the pirate ship was far away from Bansi Harbor, Verdu had just finished treating his injuries, took a bottle of medicine, and allowed himself to quickly fall asleep so that he could adjust his mental state. In the hazy, dreamy world, he ran into a desolated moor, looking for something frantically, but he found nothing. Suddenly, Verdu heard a faint voice coming from deep in the moor. The great god of war, the symbol of iron and blood, the ruler of chaos and strife. This sentence repeated over and over again, but it didn't alarm Verdu enough to snap him out of his dream. After some time, Verdu woke up and opened his eyes. At that moment, the morning sun shone in the cabin outside the window, bringing with it a faint light. Verdu slowly sat up and realized that he didn't need to use the powers of astrologer to recall the 3 lines of the honorific name that he had heard in his dream. And his relatively rich mysticism knowledge told him that it was referring to a hidden existence at the level of a deity. Is this the result of the incomplete symbols and labels around the altar, or a result of me witnessing that street in the grayish-white fog? Verdu frowned and fell into deep thought. He didn't rashly attempt to recite the honorific name, because he knew how miserable people who had done something like this had died. God of War, Verdu vaguely remembered that he had seen this deity's name in a book in his family. He decided to do some research before considering how to deal with it later. Bansi Harbor on a collapsed coastal mountain, red, blazing white or orange flames emerged from the crevices of the gravel, forming a figure. The figure was wearing a black blood-stained armor with a half-grown fiery red hair. He looked young and handsome. Okay, handsome. Good shit. There was a blood-colored mark on his glabella that resembled a flag. There were traces of decay on his face. It was none other than Red Angel Evil Spirit, Sauron Einhorn Medici. If he didn't have Sephiric Castle as his Attendant of Mysteries characteristics to allow his marionettes to run around the world without considering the limitations of distance, I wouldn't need to take... Oh shit, you're right. There is no limitations to distance now. Because technically, when he spawns a new marionette, the new distance is from that marionette's position, right? Is that how it worked? So now the range isn't bound to Klein, but like, technically all the marionettes are also like the main Klein, right? Is that what it was? That's how that whole no limitation part was justified. I wouldn't need to take such a roundabout route. The Red Angel Evil Spirit tisked a mystery as to who he was speaking for. In mid-air, a raven landed on the top of a boulder. There was a raven, Amon. There was a circle of white on its right eye, and a human voice sounded from its mouth. You actually used him and not him. This isn't like your style. The Red Angel Evil Spirit chuckled. That's because he wishes others to call him as him and not him. Dude, for people just listening, that is so weird. Don't remember, not gonna lie. That's because, let me read this part for, since you guys aren't reading it. There were so many quotations right here. That's because, quoted, he wishes others to call him as him and not him. No, wait, no, not him, as he spoke. Sauron Einhorn managed to glance at the raven. He's him, he. This form of yours looks cuter than your true self, don't you think, little raven? The white-eyed raven replied without any hint of anger, your mockery is just like you. Still living in the previous epoch, the red angel evil spirit smiled and said, the developments have been rather smooth, and he has been fooled. However, I believe even if he discovers it, he will probably turn a blind eye. Him, he, ha, who. He what? For the two of you to become the great old ones. Oh shit. Okay, we're getting right into it. For the two of you to become great old ones, Dor has to return. No fucking way Mr. Dor returns. Dor has to return. The hypocritical him might still be hesitating about whether to do it, because if he isn't careful, it will bring about a huge disaster. Huh? I like disasters. I don't. Lil Raven, where are you going to make your payment? If you don't have enough strength, I won't be able to gain trust of the brainless Abraham. When he prays to you, he said, the white-eyed raven, if you're worried about such a state won't last long, I can't parasitize a worm of spirit into your body and help you maintain it. There's no need to thank me. As he spoke, the raven spread its wings and disappeared into the vast night sky. The red angel evil spirit turned his head and looked with the advantage of the terrain, wore a solemn expression as he looked down at Banshee ruins. Oh man, next chapter. Chapter 1340 can change back to song to regular series music. But chapter 1340 is called Travel Diaries. The small city called Utopia is instinctively no different from the ones I had been in the past. Be it the folk culture, the people, or the archaeological style, it follows very closely to the standard Alolan styles. I've heard that the southern continent has many peculiar and unusual traditions. I hope that I can experience it myself one day. Of course, that's after East and West Balam's peace is restored. Speaking of which, the most special thing about this place is that the weather is always changing and there's always a storm. As a result, most people have umbrellas and raincoats. There are smeared with Doningsmen tree sap. The hotel attendant told me that for a person or a certain income level, which also has a need to work outdoors, they would have to save quite a sum of money to purchase a raincoat. Otherwise, the sickness would only take more away. There are no meteorologists here. I have no idea why there are so many changes in the weather here. I can only guess that it has something to do with it lining the sea and being close to places of hurricanes. Yes, there's a deep water harbor a few kilometers away from Utopia. However, they're lacking in manpower and isn't very well managed. It can only maintain its operations on a small scale. They don't have local newspapers either. After all, it's just a small city with a few thousand people. The paper boys mainly sell the Tussock Times, Desi Mirror, and Sea Wind News. This, dude, I'm still like, how the fuck? Wiz said this volume is better than 6. But the fucking Light Seeker was such a banger as like finale, and I'm like, how does it get better? I feel like I'm hyping myself up a little bit too much right now. The second reason I like this place is because many people in Utopia are optimistic and are very enthusiastic about life. When I wrote this down, a band happened to pass by outside of the hotel. I really don't feel ready. It's just a professional band, but a group formed purely from amateur enthusiasts. Among them, there are civil servants, law enforcement officers, solicitors, professional policemen, school teachers, candy factory workers, shop owners. Among them, those with money are responsible for large musical instruments such as the cello, violins, and other difficult musical instruments. The lower and middle class citizens use relatively simple instruments like 7-string guitars and harmonicas. On some rest days, they will walk the streets and set off from the municipal square. They will circle the city before returning to the St. Ariana Cathedral near the square. They call this a musical tour. In the tour, not only do they not reject other citizens from joining, but they even encourage them to sing or dance along with the procession. According to my observations, the participants are very happy and very satisfied, and they freely express their loves for life. This gives me a feeling of full of vigor. I have to admit that it's very infectious. I've tried to join the tour. I forgotten my troubles in the revelry of music, dancing, and singing. I only remember happiness. They aren't on a tour today. Instead, they're showing their blessings to a newly wed couple at the cathedral. Speaking of weddings, what I don't understand the most is that it only has the Evernight Goddess Cathedral. One ought to know that it's in most of the kingdom, even a small town, there would be at least 2 cathedrals, one belonging to Evernight Goddess and the other to the Lords of Storms. Before today, I couldn't imagine that an ordinary town in the kingdom would only believe in one deity. However, this doesn't cause too much trouble for me. Before I turned 18, I could only believe in the Lords of Storms under the influence of my family. However, after I graduated from grammar school, I came to truly understand that the goddess is the most compassionate and benevolent deity. Back to the wedding, I participated in a wedding a couple of days ago. I discovered that Utopia has some special customs in this area. Out of all of them, what I admire the most is that when the priest pronounces the man and wife, the groom and bride will bow to each other. No one is superior in the relationship, as they only sincerely express their gratitude and be able to spend the rest of their lives together. This might be an expression of equality between man and woman in the goddess's teachings. In addition, there will be some special game segments after the wedding. For example, let the groom and bride publicly describe their love story. Oh, like how they met? This may be a rather embarrassing matter for them, but to the guests, it's rather interesting. Yes, I don't think so too, but I definitely won't add similar segments to my wedding. At that wedding, I heard the best love story I've heard so far. If there's a chance, and if you're my dear readers of a particular column enjoy it, I'll consider retelling it. Of course, I'll change the names and some details to prevent the couples from feeling trouble. The most important reason why I like Utopia is its food. The food here is very delicious. The limited number of restaurants are all very good, and the best is undoubtedly the detached restaurant in Iris' hotel I'm staying at. So, for these travel diaries, like, they literally don't even know what the fuck is going on. Be it the most basic beefsteak, fried pig chop, charcoal barbecued meat, spiced fried fish, or even more complicated and more different stewed mutton with peas, the thick cream soup, buttered potatoes, and roasted— I'm getting so hungry, bro. And roasted potato skin, all of them have reached the level of a master chef in the city. In addition, the chefs here are quite skilled in creating unique dishes and food. There are sweet and sour meat cubes and grilled fish smeared with various condiments, and the staples that don't seem to allow for experimentation. The chefs of Utopia haven't given up. I've eaten all kinds of toast in the city: yam, potatoes, butter, creams, and one on fruit. As long as I was willing to, I could make it so that I don't eat the same thing twice during the week. The best food of praise here is their desserts: cream pudding, fruit pudding, black forest cakes, carrot cakes, milk cakes, muffins, egg tarts. I feel hungry writing this. I'm feeling hungry reading this. This is the reason why I suddenly wish to leave after staying here for a week. What I am most worried about now is my wallet, but my weight. I'm glad that the hotel doesn't have a weight scale. At the same time, I blame them for not including one. The red wine in Utopian is also rather outstanding. The only problem is that they lack the age to settle down. It seems like the vineyards around the city haven't realized this. Here, I need to seriously recommend a drink. I feel like that's because Klein kind of doesn't excel in that aspect. He wouldn't know too much. Yeah, no, we're gonna... No, we're gonna stop at 44, Alma. Yeah, I think Love said stop at 44, and then tomorrow's 45 to 54. Here, I need to... I'll double check right now. Here, I need to certainly recommend a drink. Utopia's Fizzling Iced Tea. It's very special, and it has even more amazing experiences besides the sweetness and bubble. Every night, I would go for a stroll in the municipal square. That was also the place where most Utopians like to go entertainment. They have an extremely love for pigeons. I met an artist at the municipal square. His name is Anderson. He's handsome, and his artistic skills are superb. I'm sorry, is Croissant? I'm sorry, like, our Anderson? The greatest hunter Anderson? Is he there? His name is, or is this just a marionette named Anderson? He's handsome and his artistic skills are superb. Unfortunately, he's a mute. That's not Anderson. I'd also know another writer. His name is Aldzu. It's a rather strange name. He said that he's writing a long novel and asked me to appraise the beginning. I won't comment on his novel, but I was just curious about a few familiar names at the beginning of the novel. It included Anderson, Wendy. Oh yes, this is the boss of my favorite bakery. I raised this question, and Aldzu told me very seriously that when a writer can't think of names for characteristics, it's very reasonable for them to use someone they know as reference. I agree. Since this column is too narrow to contain my thoughts, I'll end it here. Love, Charlotte. So this was Charlotte's Diaries. Klein hates Anderson speaking so much he made him mute YouTube. I didn't even fucking pick up on that. I didn't even realize that. You know, that makes sense. Anderson was a fucking talker, dude. He was definitely a fucking instigator aboard the ship. He was definitely trying to make people enemies just from fucking him speaking so much. Love, Charlotte. Monica put down... That's pretty funny in retrospect. I didn't even pick up on that. Monica put down her fountain pen and seriously read the manuscript twice. She changed certain words and grammatical errors. She was a writer and she wasn't famous at first. so she could only rely on writing third-rate romance novels to maintain her life. After she changed her faith to the Evernight Goddess, her father had almost cut off all ties with her. Damn. However, ever since Miss Forrest Wall, who had written Stormwind Mountain Villa, establishing a travel column and had received quite a warm response after the war, Monica had also started to write about her travels in some backland newspapers. This perfectly matched her hobby, and her hobby gave her unique vitality to help her become a famous travel columnist. Charlotte was her pen name it's not her real name. After her writing dried completely, Monica specifically wrote another copy and stuffed it into an envelope before affixing it with a stamp. After confirming that the address was correct, the black-haired lady with a Desi Bay style carried her handbag and left the hotel, heading to Utopia Post Office. The post office was next to the telegraph office. Whenever Monica passed the latter, she would always find it a waste. From her point of view, Utopia rarely needs to send telegrams. It was too extravagant to specifically build a telegraph office. After sending the letter, Monica looked at the sky and walked towards the municipal square. When she arrived at the entrance of St. Ariana Cathedral, she met Billy's. He was a police officer. Oh, Billy's is back. He had only questioned Monica at the Iris Hotel due to the homicide witness. Fortunately, Monica didn't know that man named the window. Oh no, I lied. Wait, no, I didn't lie. After greeting each other with a nod, Monica entered the cathedral and found a seat. She listened quietly to the sermon of the priest named Townsend? This was a priest she found to be the most clergyman-like ever since she changed her faith to the Evernight Goddess. His hair was half white and he spoke slowly in melody. His voice was deep and low, always calming down people without them realizing it. Monica closed her eyes and listened attentively to the sermon. Eastchester County and a forest belonging to the Hall family. Alfred, Hybrid, and Audrey led their respective foxhounds with their servants around the forest and chased after their prey. This was the first time the three of them had hunted together since they became adults. In front of their sisters, Alfred and Hybrid had a great time, at least on the surface, and to Alfred the biggest problem was how to control himself and not show that he was too extraordinary. Otherwise, if a disciplinary paladin were to join the hunt, no one else would have the chance. He knew that his sister was a Beyonder, but he also knew the sequence of Beyonder, Spectre the Pathway, didn't have any actual compatibility. As they chased their prey, they rushed out of the forest and saw a wheat field. "Where are we?" Audrey, dressed in hunting gear, asked casually. This was her first time hunting in the forest, and she didn't know where it led to. Hybrid wasn't too familiar with the area as well. He turned his head and said to his attendant, "Ask someone." As they waited, the three siblings laughed as they discussed their trophies. As a golden retriever, Susie, she glanced at the foxhounds that wanted to get closer to her and made them distance themselves. After a while, Hybrid's attendant returned and reported, "Sir, there's a village called Harthalkia nearby." Harthalkia? That village with the dragon worship customs. I came here from somewhere else. Audrey was taken aback when she heard that. Next chapter. So what, 4 more chapters? Chapter 1341 is called In the Dream. After regaining her senses, Audrey maintained her faint smile and she became wary. She could vaguely feel a mysterious force pushing her to Harklof, the village with the tradition of a dragon worship. This was like an arrangement of fate. Audrey had once entered the Hall of Truth and she discovered that the murals inside had turned into reality. Furthermore, she knew that Spectre the Pathway Sequence 1 was author. From this name, she had made some connection, so it was inevitable for her to suspect that something was amiss. At this moment, Hybrid laughed. "I've heard of this village. I remember that our family had a manor nearby." As he spoke, he looked up at the sky. "It's almost evening. Why don't we stay there and continue hunting tomorrow?" Alfred wasn't opposed to his eldest brother's suggestion, to him staying the night at whichever manor was essentially the same. He nodded and said, "Send someone back to inform father and mother." Audrey didn't say a word. Her green eyes turned slightly and her gaze swept across the faces of her two brothers. Hybrid's brows immediately furrowed and said, "I think it's best we return. This manor wasn't informed in advance, so they definitely weren't prepared. Perhaps there was no way for them to service so many horses, hounds, and servants. Besides, there's still an hour before the evening. There's enough time for us to return." When Alfred saw his brother change his mind so quickly, he wanted to act contrary to him. However, on second thought, he felt that what his brother said made sense, considering that his sister was also here. He tearfully agreed and said, "Then let's head back quietly." With that said, he didn't wait for Hybrid. Squeezing at the horse's side and brandishing the horse whip, he led the way Hybrid forward, then relaxed. Without saying anything else, he led his sister, the group of attendants, servants, and hounds, and turned around, following the edge of the forest, and returned to a manor on the other side. Audrey quietly followed. Hey, that's an amazing emote, by the way. Thank you, Merlin. You can spam those emotes for $1. Audrey quietly followed behind, not expressing her opinion on the development of the matter. Late at night in a manor in Eastchester County, having used the manipulative powers to change the thoughts of her two brothers to prevent them from approaching Lark, Audrey lifted the velvet blanket and crawled into bed, entering a deep sleep. In her reverie, she suddenly sat up. Hell yeah. She then looked around and saw, hell yeah, amazing emote by the way. She then looked around and saw the familiar dressing table at the bathroom entrance. She realized that she was still in the room, but the crimson moon outside of the window was gone. There was no stars, only darkness. This isn't the real world. Audrey instantly made a judgment and expected herself. Soon she came to the conclusion this was a dream. It was rather strange to dream that made her remain lucid. It's really here. Audrey didn't feel any panic. She was just a little vexed. She hadn't handled the development properly in the afternoon, which led to the problem of extending to the manor where her parents were. In hindsight, she believed that she would have followed Hybert's idea and headed straight to the family manor near Lark. Then she could reasonably arrange for Hybert and Alfred to return here, leaving her to stay behind and wait for any possible developments. This way, even if anything happened, it wouldn't affect their parents, brothers, and most of their servants. However, at the same time, her main goal wasn't to follow the arrangements of fate. As long as she could avoid Harklock, she would try her best to avoid it. To her surprise, danger would at times spring on you even if you didn't seek it out. To avoid it and stall for time, she wasn't a universal solution. Audrey immediately got off the bed and stood barefoot on the thick carpet. She had already confirmed that with the love of a demigod as a dreamwalker, she could directly escape with the strange dream and return to the real world, avoiding the suspected invitation once more. After looking around, Audrey pursed her lips, removed the blue cloak hanging on the clothes rack beside her, and wore it. She took a deep breath and walked towards the door. During this process, a crimson star tattoo appeared on the back of her hand. Okay. The tattoo vanished as though it had never appeared. Fuck was that? This was the mark left on her after her first entry into the ancient palace above the Great Fog. For a very long time, it hadn't shown any special traits. It was only at the beginning of this year that Mr. Fool informed them that in situations in which they couldn't pray, they could use the triggering of the corresponding tattoo to skip the chanting of the honorific name. Hello, hello. Amazing emotes, by the way. Simply put, this was a treatment that a blessed of a deity enjoyed. Of course, there was no way to transmit any information. It could only be used in critical situations, allowing Mr. Door to cast his gaze over. And more importantly, the star-like crimson mark was rather eye-catching. It could easily be discovered by others and people who were secretly monitoring them. Therefore, under a situation where she needed to hide her uniqueness, Audrey was more inclined to use the various abilities of a manipulator to implant the ideas of praying to Mr. Fool to some inconspicuous human nearby. She got them to complete the prayer at suitable times and locations and pray for her protection. At that moment, she believed that the owner of the dreamscape knew that she was problematic. She felt that there was no need to go through all that trouble. All she needed to do was hide the entity she was praying to. When she reached the door, Audrey reached out the handle and gently twisted it before pulling it backwards. The slightly dark corridor entered her vision. The main building of the manor had a history of over 100 years. Many places still had their former characteristics, especially the corridor section. It didn't have any gas lamps, and the walls were decorated with candle stands made of silver or copper. There were countless candles placed on them, emitting a dim yellow light that illuminated the entire corridor and creating all kinds of shadows. They gave a feeling that a phantasm might appear at the corridor at any moment. Even this had been replicated in the dreamscape. Audrey looked around and entered the corridor. At this thought flashed across her mind, a long, thick, pale yellow carpet appeared beneath her feet. Stepping on the carpet, Audrey followed her spiritual intuition and walked to the right. After taking 2 to 3 steps, she suddenly stopped. She felt that if there was something hidden behind the 2 tightly shut doors, giving her a strong desire to explore. I thought it said explode. No, a strong desire to explore. This is father and mother's bedroom. This is Hybert's room. This is Alfred's room. Audrey made a slight note of it and frowned. Should I go back home? The ancient doors with relief were extremely mysterious. Like, is it showing her her house? The ancient door with relief were extremely mysterious. Under the dim candlelight, it made one eager to know what was hidden behind them. As her thoughts raced, Audrey suddenly understood what they represented in the dream. This was a door to the mind world. Behind each door was the mind world of their owners. Okay, that makes sense. In other words, after Audrey pushed open Alfred's door, she would see the various secrets hidden deep in his heart. By the same logic, she could pry into the secrets of Lord Hall and Lady Catelyn. She slowly retracted her gaze. Audrey closed her eyes and continued walking forward, preventing herself from being affected. After all her experiences, she gradually understood a principle. A demigod in the mind domain needed to control themselves and respect others, under the premise that she could read people's true thoughts through their body language, facial expressions, and emotional fluctuations. If she wasn't satisfied, she could greatly explore the inner thoughts of others and dig out their secrets. In the end, she would suffer a backlash. This was a very simple principle. Everyone had some darkness in them in varying amounts of nasty thoughts. However, they had control over them, preventing them from affecting their actions. Under such circumstances, if a demigod in the mind domain still insisted on digging these thoughts and dug out the ugly parts under their mask, it was very easy for them to be disappointed in human nature, be tainted by all kinds of negative thoughts, gradually becoming crazy without realizing it. Maybe that's what's going on with fucking Frank Lee. He's just so crazy, he doesn't even know it. And that's why he looks so rational. This was also one of the, or that's why he also acts so rational in some parts, you know? This was also one of the reasons why, despite spectators being able to placate themselves and treat corresponding mental problems, they were also one of the pathways who would easily go mad or lose their composure. They were both safe and dangerous at the same time. That makes sense. Therefore, Audrey established rules for herself to observe. She only did observations and read the minds of people she knew. She tried her best not to enter their dreams. This restriction didn't apply to strangers. If it wasn't necessary, she wouldn't enter the mind world of anyone. Following the corridor, Audrey, who was wearing a blue cloak, reached its end. She opened her eyes and cast her gaze at the room on the left. It was a half-open solarium. Pursing her lips again, Audrey held the door open with her breathing steady. As the wooden door opened, the scene inside was gradually revealing. This was no longer a room. On the ground were round pebbles and bundles of bluish black weeds. It was so dark deep within the space that one couldn't see clearly. Audrey slowly walked in and closed the door behind her. In the darkness, the silhouettes of some objects were quickly outlined. A huge stone pillar that was tens of meters tall stood there. There was a tall lizard-like monster situated above it. The monster was squatting at the top of the stone pillar like a tiny mountain. Its body was covered in a huge grayish-white stone scales, and its eyes were pale, full, and vertical. This was a mind dragon as spoken in myths. With a whoosh, the two wings of the mind dragon spread open, almost covering the entire sky. Damn, it's fucking big. Their bones were like metallic leaf vines covering the grayish membrane with mysterious patterns. As Audrey looked up, the mind dragon emitted a buzzing sound. You've been to Leaf Seed. Oh shit, it sensed that? Without a doubt, it used Dragonese. City of Miracles, Leaf Seed. How does it know? Just as Audrey had these two thoughts, she heard the mind dragon say, everyone's consciousness is one's heart will make a certain exchange with the sea of the collective subconscious. As for a unique place like Leaf Seed, it's likewise left a special impression in you. When your virtual persona roams the sea of the collective subconscious and isn't too far from me, I can naturally sense it. Makes sense. This exceeds the limits of my abilities, and it's not something a dreamwalker can do. This mind dragon corresponds to a sequence to discerner. He actually didn't directly control me. As Audrey's thoughts flashed, the mind dragon spoke again. I'm sure you don't have any ill intentions at the moment. Audrey fell silent for 2 seconds before looking up and asking, aren't you worried that it's a trap? I feel like for you to be sequenced, so I feel like you would know if it's a trap or not. So I think that's why it's like, it's going to be a super cool, chill conversation. Knock on wood. Chapter 1342 is called Simultaneously. At that moment, Audrey even suspected that the arrangement of fate wasn't for her to head to Harklock to investigate the dragon-worshipping customs. Instead, it was to make her realize that something was wrong, causing her to feel conflicted, and made her use a virtual persona in the vicinity of a Harklock to secretly guide her two brothers into chanting in their minds without them realizing it. This would inevitably result in her consciousness being specifically related to Leaf Seed to be discerned by the mind dragon, thus attracting him. Were there spoilers? What happened? Despite being the one that had been arranged, Audrey couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. It had to be said that to achieve such an effect, one had to have an extremely high level of confidence in the reactions different people had. It struck fear into the bottom of her heart. After all, Audrey, a sequence 4 manipulator, had felt that the development of this matter was in line with her expectations. She had completely fulfilled her wish and wasn't alert at all. The mind dragon retracted its huge wings and looked down at the blue-cloaked Audrey. This is a dream race formed by many minds. Even if the ones who set up the trap personally descends, it's like it will take some time to find this room. Besides, I won't stay long. Clearly, he had been wary of traps, but he believed that certain matters were worth the risk. Dream maze. This is the beyond powers of a dream walker, or perhaps the power after a qualitative change. Audrey reined in his thoughts and asked calmly, what do you wish to know? The gigantic grayish white dragon buzzed and said, my name is Airy Hog, one of the 3 remaining ancient dragons. I butchered his fucking name. I am so sorry. He means that he is one of the 3 surviving dragons of the second epoch, and the rare known dragons are only descendants of the dragons during the era of the ancient gods. Damn. Audrey nodded slightly and didn't interrupt him. Behind her was a wooden door that stood without any support in the plain fields with bluish black weeds. It looked extremely strange. Archhog? I'm thinking of Nidhogg from 14, so hog. Arhog, like Nidhogg, Ardhog, or Arehog. Didn't waste any time. After introducing himself, he asked, "Where did you find Lifsiad?" Audrey was already prepared as she answered frankly, "In a book named Grizel's Travels. Rumor has it was personally created by the Dragon King Ankwild." Grizel Archhog clearly hadn't heard of this name before. After repeating it, he pressed it. "What kind of book is that?" The blonde-haired Audrey gave a simple description. "That's a book with a world that's almost real inside it. At the same time, it can suck in people who meet the requirements or offer their own blood to be sucked in by the book, allowing them to live in that world." Arehog is how I pronounce it. Let me use text-to-speech. Let's see.
Arehog fell silent for 2 seconds.
Oh, Arehog. Arehog. You been saying Arehog? Arehog. Arehog fell silent for 2 seconds. "Is there a seed collective subconscious in the book world?" "Yes," Audrey answered with great certainty. "The city of miracles," Leaf said. I saw was deep in seed collective subconscious in the book world." Arehog suddenly breathed harder. "What did you see in Leaf said?" Audrey recalled and said, "A city filled with towering pillars and majestic palaces. In addition, I've also entered the residences of the Dragon's King. The place can allow every living being inner thoughts to echo in the surrounding area. I call it the Hall of Truth." At the end of the Hall of Truth, amazing chapter by the way. At the end of the Hall of Truth, behind the Dragon King's throne, there are an ancient and mysterious bronze door. I'm not sure what's sealed behind it. In short, it's very dangerous, and I don't dare approach it at all. Audrey was speaking the complete truth. She just didn't mention the speculations that Mr. World and Mr. Star as she had come up with. Arehog fell completely silent. It was unknown what he was thinking of, or if he was analyzing the current situation regarding Lifsiad. During this process, his head dropped down bit by bit, as though he was going to fall from the top of a 100-meter tall pillar to the ground. Just as Audrey tensed up from this rather bizarre scene and was about to ask a question, Arehog suddenly raised his head. The golden vertical pupils in his eyes turned colder as his voice once again resounded in the wilderness. Lifsiad. Music change. After repeating himself a few times, he reached out to grab at the handle. So when we go to a bathroom door. Got it. Leaf said, with a low rumbling thunder, thank you, Cammy. With a low rumbling thunder, the things that were hidden in the dark behind Arehog quickly became clear in the gradually brightening scene, and the outlines appeared. There were huge stone pillars that were more than 100 meters tall. They were either standing alone or collectively propping up numerous majestic and ancient palaces. The stone door pillar in places were mainly grayish white in color as they landed on the island like fountains. It was identical to the City of Miracles, Leaf said, which Audrey had just described. No, this is probably the City of Miracles, Leaf said. Only then did Audrey realize that the ancient mind dragon, Arehog, was squatting at the top of the thickest, tallest stone pillar. At this moment, she could faintly feel a subtle change in Arehog. Her green eyes darted around slightly, and the sounds of the metal handle being twisted sounded from behind her. Oh, my voice. This, Audrey held back the urge to turn her head abruptly. She turned her body wildly to the side, allowing her gaze to fall to the sides. The individual wooden door that had lost its external support slowly opened, revealing the visitor's appearance. A huge white rabbit. Is it Hermes? A huge white rabbit with wiggled ears that walked upright. Above the gray fog in the ancient palace, a figure was shrouded in the grayish white fog. He sat at the full seat at the end of the long model table as he silently observed the crimson star representing justice. Backland Westboro, 9 Bellington Street. The closer Wendell was to the end of the 2 weeks, the more he suffered from insomnia. He had to rely on medication to fall asleep. When he woke up, he was also restless, extremely anxious. He had lost all interest in food and only forced himself to eat the 3 meals sent by his colleagues to ensure his energy. He didn't know what would happen on the date of the trial, nor did he know if there would be an irreversible change in his body. This kind of fear towards the unknown often made him feel stiffened. It was extremely torturous. Sometimes Wendell would even think that it might not be a wise choice resisting his return to Utopia. Based on his limited experiences there, if he obedient returned to Utopia and testified in court, there was a high chance that he would leave safely At least up to this point, Wendell hadn't heard of anyone dying or going crazy because of Utopia. That's because they were rather friendly, and apart from being a little bizarre, bizarre, you'd say. I'm just going to help. They should be grateful to me instead of being antagonistic. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it would be more comfortable to face the danger. Of course, he had no doubts about MI9's protective capabilities. If it wasn't possible, he felt that he could only consider meeting the Lord of Storms early. Wendell exhaled and sat down on his chair. He casually picked up a novel to pass the time. And he sits on the toilet. However, in his frustration made it impossible for him to immerse himself in the plot. He flipped through the pages more frequently, and finally he snapped the book closed. He closed his eyes and prepared to take a nap. In a daze, Wendell seemed to return to Utopia and arrived at the court. However, the role he was in wasn't as a witness, but a member of the audience. Tracy was deemed to be the judge to have provided insufficient evidence to support a claim for self-defense and had been transferred to the criminal courts. He saw this lady tearing up in a daze, her smile extremely miserable. Wendell woke up and stared silently at the wall lamps in front of him. He sat there motionless for a long time. If the problem is Utopia, not the residents of Utopia, then me avoiding it might end up killing a poor lady. Wendell retracted his gaze. He resolved, his hands wavered slightly, but he was unable to overcome the fear in his heart. With his hands on the table, he stood up and walked to the door. He planned to wander about MI9's headquarters to ease his mood. After leaving the room and taking a few steps forward, Wendell suddenly heard a colleague in the office discussing the related case of Utopia. Have you heard of the person who entered Utopia was a carriage driver? He sent a merchant from Utopia to the dock area, and with just 2 turns at a crossroads, he found himself somewhere unfamiliar. There's a need to warn all the carriage drivers in Backland. Yes, it's best to draw a parallel between Utopia and the spies so that they can understand. The way of entering and exiting Utopia is really frightening. Yes, sometimes I even suspect that the entrance to Utopia might appear anywhere. It really is anywhere. There's definitely a limit to this. It's not as omnipotent as we imagine. Otherwise, I might find myself in Utopia just by paying a visit to the washroom. No shot. That's how he ends up in Utopia. According to the current patterns, we figured that is theoretically valid. When Wendell heard about this, his blood vessels on his forehead began to throb. He suddenly felt that even he was in the headquarters of MI9. No way, he's gonna be in the bathroom. And then when he opens the door, and POV change. Unless there's a demigod watching the entire time, it's very difficult for me to avoid the fate of returning to Utopia. Perhaps after I wash my hands and open the washroom door, I'll discover that it's the Iris's hotel outside. No ordinary demigods might be able to stop such a thing. This doesn't seem like it's something humans can accomplish. It's already extremely close to that of a deity, you don't say. Wendell instantly panicked, unable to suppress the fear of his heart. He returned to the room and took out the subpoena from Utopia Court. Immediately following that, Wendell entered the washroom, held the document as he muttered in fear, I'm willing to go to the court to testify. I'm willing to go to court to testify. So if you have a desire to go, you go. After repeating himself a few times, he reached out and grabbed the handle of the bathroom door. Wait! Battle music! Really? Alright. What the fuck? Battle already? From the bathroom door? Oh, my voice. Oh, man. He grabbed the bathroom door and now we have battle music. At that moment, a black raven flew through the ventilation hole like a ghost and landed in a corner of the washroom that no one would notice. Fuck you. Not Wendell. Amon sneaks into fucking Utopia? Is that what's gonna happen? And the next second, Wendell twisted the handle, pulled the door back, and opened the washroom door. Oh my god, it was no longer his familiar... I can already see why fucking Wiz said this is the best volume. Oh shit. And the next second, Wendell twisted the handle, pulled the door back, and opened the washroom door. It was no longer his familiar bedroom, but an unfamiliar hobby. I'm fucking stuttering over here. But an unfamiliar lobby. No fucking way. Weaved nightmare, brothers and sisters. We have to stop on the cliffhanger, bro. What the fuck? Oh, I can already feel it, man. It's gonna be a cliffhanger ending. I ain't ready. Are you guys ready? If there's artwork on this, you guys got, if there's any crazy artwork, send it to me. If not, I'm gonna use the bathroom thumbnail. But are you guys ready? 1343 is called Weaved Nightmares. I really returned to Utopia, and then fucking he literally brought him on into the bathroom. I really returned to Utopia. That sounds wrong in so many ways. Decide after reading? Okay. Either something serious or something goofy. I really returned to Utopia. Upon seeing the scene outside, Wendell felt a baffling sense of relief and ease. He no longer had any doubts about his choice to go testify in court. It had to be known that he was in the washroom of MI9's headquarters. It was a place that was impossible to invade even with a fully armed army. Wendell slowly exhaled as he walked out of the washroom and towards the entrance of the lobby. Behind him in the corner of the washroom, where no one was paying attention to, the pitch-black raven had draped over a shadow-like veil, losing its physical presence. Even if one were to directly look at it, it would be difficult to discover it. Then its body became more and more transparent as it rapidly dissipated until it vanished. And now he's looking microbes in the air. At this moment, Wendell had already walked a few meters out of the lobby when he saw a police officer in a black and white checkered uniform. This was a young officer who had requested for him to testify. Billy's. "I knew you'd come because you're a kind person." Billy smiled at Wendell. When he heard, oh shit, this is crazy. When he heard of this compliment, Wendell strung up her heart finally returned to normal. Then he instinctively turned his head back and saw that the bathroom that had come out and had changed completely in style. It was no longer familiar to him. In a dream maze formed by many minds, the huge white rabbit that walked we're with Audrey. The huge white rabbit that walked upright squeezed through the open door and entered the vast wilderness, the grayish-white pillars and magnificent palaces. Mr. Rafe, although it wasn't wearing the persona mask, its unforgettable characteristics were enough for Audrey to recognize him at a glance. This was out of her expectations, but it wasn't too surprising. From her point of view, just Mr. Raff alone likely was enough to deal with an ancient mind dragon like Ari Hogg. Even if Mr. Fool had warned her to be wary of Mr. Raff, after all, the leader behind the psychology alchemists, the former kings of angels, had already become a sequence zero true god. According to the knowledge shared by the Terry Club, there shouldn't be any other authors beyonders in the real world. And this way, no matter how powerful Mr. Raff was, as long as it was still part of the spectator pathway, it would at most be at the same level of an Ari Hogg. The only thing that would differ were combat experiences, psychological research, and self-cultivation. Self-cultivation, you say? I understood that reference. At this moment, as a giant white rabbit entered, the large grayish-white scaling Ari Hogg spread open his wings, which were covered his skin. The surrounding area was instantly covered in shadow. With a leap, the white rabbit's legs suddenly became extremely huge, like a tiny hill. At the same time, the gloomy sky above him lit up. The ground beneath his feet cracked open, spewing out crimson lava. It spewed out crimson lava? Immediately after a blurry... How do we even animate this, bro? Immediately after, a blurry and distorted figure appeared behind him. The figure was dressed in a simple white robe. It was difficult to see his face clearly, and it was impossible to tell his age. One could only vaguely tell that he was a man. A bright halo hung at the back of his head like a miniature sun. Beneath his feet was an illusory cloak that was divided into 12 segments. Each segment represented a different symbol of time. Behind him, there was a shadow that looked like a curtain. I seemed to be looking out from the shadow. Just after this figure appeared, the entire dream maze shook violently, and gray fragments fell from the void. The contrast of depravity, the pure sunlight rapidly spewed around from the huge white rabbit, eroding or assimilating the area. However, that simple white-robed figure had trouble truly taking shape. It was unable to enter the reality from history and the illusions. Easy needs at least a week to digest this chapter? Hell no. We raw dog it. We finish tomorrow, man. Every time his silhouette became clear, his figure would distort like a machine that had its signal disrupted. Read slowly? Okay, I'll slow down. I'm getting excited. At that moment, Audrey instinctively retracted her gaze, not daring to look directly at the huge white rabbit. Perhaps it was because she was in a dream and was closely connected to the mind island, the sea of the selective subconscious. She didn't need anyone to explain to her because she knew what Mr. Raff was doing. What is he doing? Who is it? Mr. Raff? Yeah, Mr. Raff. Sunny, I hope this happens. Mr. Raff was doing. The other party knew that the latent psychological problems of the Ari Hogg and knew what he feared the most. Then, according to this, it produced a nightmare that counted the specific images. In a battle between a high sequence beyonders and a spectator pathway, you knew it yesterday, bro. We literally just said it. Merlin. The figure Raff summoned, Merlin. They literally said it was suspected to be Merlin. Yes, that was said yesterday. Not the rabbit. Oh no, we're fighting Greed. We're fighting one of the counselors. What? The counselor from yesterday. No, wait. Insert a cat. We've been reading Merlin Hermes so long. We've been reading Merlin Hermes so long. I was like, oh yeah, Merlin. No, Hermes. Hermes, the one who created ancient. Yes, yeah, Hermes. No, sorry. No, we're good. Sorry. Tongue twister. It's just Merlin Hermes has been the new Hermes for so long. Yes. No, Hermes, like OG Hermes, not new Hermes, OG Hermes. I'm talking about who Hermes summoned to fight Archog right now. It's Greed. Wait, no, not Greed. I mean Mr. Raph. That's who Audrey said. It's Mr. Raph. Wait. So who is the rabbit? That's literally what Audrey just said. What do you mean, bruh? What? Mr. Raph is a rabbit suspect. That's what I am saying. Wait, it's the same people. Wait, it's the same. Oh shit, it's the same person. Wait, that just clicked. Wait, I didn't realize that. I thought there were two different people. Hermes became Mr. Raph, one of the 7 counselors that was turned into the White Rabbit. Now, who did he summon? Is it not the same person? Hermes is the rabbit who is... Wait, who? A figure with light and a shadow curtain behind it. A figure with a shadow and a light curtain behind it. No, wait, hold up. That description is not specific enough. That figure for me, I still don't know who that figure is. I don't know who that figure is. I know I just read it. I don't know who that is though. I don't know who uses a dark curtain. A lot of people use dark curtains. What? Maybe he'll get it after reading more. Wait, let me read more. Wait, hold up. Don't give it away yet. I don't know. There's a lot of people that have been wearing curtains, black curtains. Melissa wore a black curtain to Klein's funeral. For all I know, maybe she was the one in the shadows all along. Read ahead and you'll get it. Okay, let me read a little bit more. After I lost my place. wait, that's a veil? You're right, that is a veil. Let me read a little bit more, because I still don't know who's the shadow-cloaked figure. The other party knew the latent psychological problems of Arihog and knew what he feared the most. Then, according to this, it produced a nightmare that contained the specific images. Badoon moment? In a battle between high sequence beyonders and the spectator pathway, if both parties were at the same level, it would be difficult to produce the true effects using the various means available to them. It was Melissa all along. Therefore, the battle between the same sequence spectator saints often had 3 fixed... I just skipped something. One could sneak into the island of consciousness and attempt deep hypnosis. The other could guard the door to the body of the heart and mind, preventing any foreign consciousness from entering. The other could spread a mental plague and use a sea of the collective subconscious to intrude the other enemy without them realizing it. The other would be able to placate themselves, treat the psychological ailments, and maintain their mental state. Therefore, the battle between the same sequence spectator saints often had 3 fixed styles. First, set up a trap ahead of time as a multi-pronged attack preparations. Then, by secretly leading on and guiding the opponent, one could break down their mental defenses in one strike and complete the hypnosis. Second, of course, on their physical defenses and the support of relying on a power sealed artifacts to defeat their enemy. Third, when... Whoa... This is getting hard. This is getting a little bit hard. Third, when the Beyonder powers such as the mental plague, mind deprivation, dragon's breath, consciousness control, and other Beyonder powers were unable to deal with their opponent, engaging in self-hypnotism and using dragon transformation. This is such a meta fight. Using dragon transformation would result in an intense melee battle that exchanged claw swipes and tail lashes. And the third battle, whoever had a deeper understanding of the mind domain and who will was stronger and firmer would be able to gain the upper hand by relying on the extended usage of dragon transformation. Of course, the prerequisite was that the other party had no choice of escaping. At the level of an angel, everyone was a true mythical creature. The maintenance time of the dragon transformation becoming meaningless at that moment, it mainly deepened on observation. Whoever could find a flaw in the opponent's mind could weave a corresponding nightmare, directly attacking the enemy's weakness, slowly destroying their mental defenses, and reaching the effect of going mad or dying out of fear. We go straight into volume 8. No, we won't. As Audrey, look, you see, we're name dropping Audrey. I don't know who's this other individual. No, I still don't know who the person is. As Audrey was in the same dream, sometimes like Cuttlefish will like describe a character but doesn't name drops them, right? And I don't know who, sometimes I don't pick up on it. I'm like, in my mind, it's still a mysterious figure. Until I get a name, it's still a mysterious figure. Can we bend the wave? As Audrey was in the same dream, even if the nightmare wasn't directed at her, she was still affected by the corresponding emotions, characteristics, statuses, and even corruption. Now she clearly knew that the nightmare that Mr. Rav had weaved represented the ancient sun god. This... Oh, wait, what? ASG? Now she clearly knew that the nightmare that Mr. Rav had weaved represented the ancient sun god. Basically, the rabbit summoned the thing Ari Hawk fears the most to shake his mental plague. That's how spectators fight. But what is it? Ancient sun god. Oh! I don't remember that. Oh, I did not remember that. So ancient sun god. Wait, it was just revealed right here. It did say, so it was the nightmare. Got it. Oh, nightmare. Remember, Ankelwelt's son was it the king of nightmares or something? This is ancient sun god, the one that killed every species that were oppressed. Wait, dude. So no, I remember ancient sun god literally fucking killed everything. Oh, and that's why fucking dragons went into hiding. No wonder he's fucking scared of his ass. Yeah, no, I know. I remember. Ancient sun god literally killed all the mythical creatures in the Forsaken Lands, and then all the fucking dragons literally went into hiding. I remember that. So that's what he fears the most. Now she clearly knew that the nightmare that... You see, now I know. Now it's revealed. Ancient sun god walk... I don't remember what his characteristic was, or his character description was. Now she clearly knew... Now I remember, though. Now she clearly knew that the nightmare that Mr. Rav had weaved represented the ancient... I'm sorry. Audrey is gonna go up against a manifestation of ASG with a fucking dragon. 2v1 ASG. What? That is so fucking cool, dude. What the fuck? This was the most terrifying existence in Ari Hawk's mind. At the same time, the ancient sun god's influence would uncontrollably corrupt the surroundings until it reached the entire dream. When the time came, once Audrey woke up, she would either become an untreatable mentally ill patient, or she would have become an incomplete mythical creature, completely losing all reasons and ending up wildly attacking the surrounding creatures. Why would Audrey fight? I mean, it'd be badass. One of the outcomes would have been like melee combat. I feel like we can do it. I feel like she could hold up against that. I feel like she could fucking beat him. Of course, there was another possibility that she unknowingly became depraved. She would become cold, cruel, and bloodthirsty without realizing it, as if someone had replaced her. I'm just hyping myself up over here. I'm hyping her up. She'd get cooked in a second. She'd probably get burned to a crisp before she even get close. No, all right. I was just hyping up our girl a little too much, okay? At this moment, Ari Hog, who was squatting on the top of the grayish-white pillar, let out a painful howl. As the dragon's roar echoed, the top of his head turned dark, revealing a sea of secrets and colors that was difficult to describe with words. In the sea, an even bigger, grayish-white dragon spanning 1,000 meters long rose up. One of his vertical pupils was pale gold, and the other was bright red color. There was a third eye of the dragon's forehead. It seemed to be hiding a thick shadow. Similarly, there was no need for anyone to explain. With the uniqueness of her present state, Audrey immediately knew what nightmare Ari Hog had weaved. This was something that had left a deep trauma in the giant white rabbit's heart. This was Ankelwelt that had been corrupted by the underground world. The underground world? This was the virtual persona and mental corruption which was sealed behind the bronze door, things that had been split off the ancient god. At that moment, Audrey was in an indescribable nightmare. Although she had been corrupted, her mental state was in turmoil, as though she had been awed. She immediately used Speclade on herself and didn't hesitate to rely on her own consciousness to forcibly escape the dream haze. During this process, she didn't encounter any obstruction, not just because she was an Arihog and Mr. Rav's target, but also because she had reached sequence 4 and possessed a certain amount of godhood. Therefore, she quickly woke up from her dream. Audrey suddenly opened her eyes and saw a crystal chandelier dyed in faint crimson. She saw the deep darkness of the room. Without any delay, she got out of bed and ran to the window to look outside. The entire matter was completely silent, as if it was deep asleep. Everything was normal. Audrey found that she immediately split out a virtual persona, allowing it to enter the mind island of a night patroller. She remembered very clearly that the dream maze was formed by many minds. When the nightmare spread, the results was unimaginable. Oh, you're right, like the mental plague. The nightmares would spread. Therefore, before this, she had to wake up everyone in the manor, and the next second, the patrolling guard suddenly raised his hand and removed the grenade hanging from his belt. He pulled out the pin and threw it towards the empty garden. Boom. The loud explosion jolted awake the sleeping people. That's so cool. Immediately after, the guard shouted loudly, "Enemy assault, enemy assault." Earl Hall and his wife were already over 50 years old, so as light sleepers, he jolted awake immediately. Regardless of how good hybrid sleep quality was, he woke up in Revere thanks to such a loud explosion. Alger, get down! Sir, get down! Alfred had opened his eyes the moment the grenade was thrown. The remaining butler's maid, footmen, and bodyguards woke up one after another. They looked confused and dumbfounded, not knowing what had happened. And at that far off the manor's main building, a few servants heard the commotion and didn't wake up in time. A few seconds later, they struggled on the bed in pain. Like a snake shedding its skin, they broke free from their skin, turning into hideous bodies of blood. They didn't wake up until they died. At that moment, Audrey saw a grayish-white dragon spread its wings in the sea of the collective conscience as it rapidly departed. A huge white rabbit followed closely behind, so he's chasing. In the blink of an eye, the dragon's voice resounded in the illusory sea. Adam isn't necessary, Adam. Just like how I might not necessarily be Arihog. The giant white rabbit suddenly slowed down and gradually stopped. All the abnormalities came to an end as the entire air returned to normal. In the ancient palace above the fog, Adam didn't attack. The fool Klein frowned slightly as he turned his... Adam? I'm sorry, it's like there's so many people at play right now. Adam didn't attack. The fool Klein frowned slightly as he turned his attention back to Utopia and replaced the instinctual monitoring of the worms of spirit. He carefully inspected his marionette town and didn't find anything abnormal. No, we're good now. Exactly, Sonny. With literally the fucking power of friendship, like, Audrey literally just befriended Arihog, but I have read so much anime. I have read so much manga, watched so much anime and media. I've played so many video games. With the power of friendship, you can prevail any odds. Audrey teaming up with Arihog, they would have been an ASG. Prove me otherwise. Let's read the last chapter for today. Cammy saying, nah, hell no. You know what's the Gojo meme? Nah, I'd win. That's ASG right there. Nah, I'd win. Chapter 1344 is called Humanity, seeing that there wasn't any abnormalities in the town of Marionettes yet. Klein began thinking about Miss Justice's encounter. It wasn't Adam who set up the attack against Arihawk, but Hermes who masterminded it. Otherwise, you see, this is what I really like about Cuttlefish. He caters to people of my intelligence when we don't pick up things right away. After the whole ordeal, we'll have a character be like, so it wasn't Adam who set up the attack against Arihawk, but Hermes who masterminded it. You see, then we get the name drops here, rather than all the assumptions, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible for Adam to not descend. It would also be impossible for Arihawk to escape so easily. He had to rely on the second city of miracles to have some hope of doing so. Hermes was the mastermind that development of this whole episode became logical. Hermes never thought of the capturing or killing Arihawk. He only hoped to learn some information from this ancient mind dragon. When Arihawk said Adam isn't necessarily Adam, the operation came to a natural end. When Arihawk said Adam isn't necessarily Adam, the operation just came to an end. Yes, from the looks of it, Hermes already had some doubts about Adam's true state. However, due to the limitations of his status... So who the fuck is he? Music changed at the end of 1344. Without any hesitation, Klein habitually served the area. Without any hesitation, Klein served the area. Without any hesitation, yes. Yes, from the looks of it, Hermes already had some doubts about Adam's true state. Thank you, Kemi. However, due to the limitations of his statuses, he had been unable to make Arihawk appear on his own accord, so he used Miss Justice. Adam isn't necessarily Adam. Arihawk isn't necessarily Arihawk. The sentence is very interesting. The upper echelons of the speculative pathway are more mysterious than seers. You don't say. Back then, Dragon Imagination Ankelwald clearly occupied Sequence 0, but he had a Sequence 1 son of the same pathway as him, Dragon of Nightmare Alzahud. I remember him. If Adam really isn't Adam, then who is he? Wait, we're asking this question a lot. Who is he? Is it that Adam from the myth is time before the first epoch, or part of the primordial one, or is he related to the resurrection of the ancient sun god? From the looks of it, the meaning behind why Medici addresses him as a zealot has far more profound meaning. Oh, he's calling him a zealot because he isn't he. So who the fuck is Adam? Klein quickly conjured a gold coin and who would Medici call those zealots? Maybe one, it has to be like one of the other Kings of Angels? If not Adam, what other ones would it be? Klein quickly conjured a gold coin and flicked it into the air, making a divination. The results of divination indicated that today's development was nothing dangerous. Klein immediately dispersed the gold coin and prepared to descend his consciousness into the bottom beneath St. Ariana Cathedral. Adam is the friends we made along the way. Imagine all these fucking individuals was just Klein all along. What if like all this is just a crazy ass dream and Klein is still in the cocoon and he's creating all these scenarios in his head, right? Or this is just a dream and Klein wakes up at the end and he's like on his keyboard. Like he fell asleep. Or like what if he just fell asleep reading a book called Lord of the Mysteries? And it's like, oh, and it ends with, I just had the craziest dream. And then it says, Lord of the Mysteries book 1 ends. At this moment, his actions became slightly sluggish. No, that's trash. The moment Miss Justice met Arihog and Hermes was almost simultaneous at the moment that MI9 personally returned to Utopia to testify in court. Just looking at them individually, there was no problem, but the world simultaneously made Klein somewhat alert. He was very sensitive to the words like happened to, coincidences, simultaneous, and almost the same. This was a mark left behind by his past experiences. He tapped his fingers on the edge of the long model table and decided to make all the preparations for his world. For his worries, he quickly condensed a light that continued certain words after some kind of will, and he threw it into a prayer light. After doing this, Klein made his consciousness sink and left Sephira Castle, allowing his mind to return to his original body. Immediately after, he began to influence Utopia. He planned to use all sorts of arrangements to temporarily make all the foreigners leave. This way, even if anything happened, it wouldn't affect the innocent. This also meant that Klein was prepared to abandon Utopia and change locations to rebuild his marionette town. After all, a ritual could be repeated many times, but he could only afford one resurrection. I find it crazy how he's so confident he only has one left. Having a good rest for the next 2 days, there's still some time left before court begins. I was about like automatically say courting death. Before court begins, Billy sent Wendell to the entrance of the Arcis Hotel. Wendell replied with a smile, I'm already feeling sleepy. It was in the middle of the night. He had trouble sleeping previously because of his anxiety and nervousness. That was why he thought of walking around the headquarters of MI9 to ease his mood. However, when he heard the conversation between his colleagues at night, it triggered an eruption in his emotions and he decided to return to Utopia and face the problem. After checking in, Wendell took his luggage and went to the 3rd floor. When he passed through the door, he vaguely felt that his surroundings were abnormally dark. In order to sleep better, Wendell walked to the window and drew the curtains. During this process, he felt the scenery outside the window was unusually familiar. However, under the covers of the night, he couldn't tell what was happening too clearly. Thinking that it might have been the scene that had been seen in Utopia previously, he covered his mouth with his hand and yawned. He took off his clothes and walked towards the bed. Monica slept until midnight when she suddenly needed to pee. Unable to hold it any longer, she eventually got out of bed and walked towards her room attached to the bathroom. When she pushed the bathroom door open, she found it a little heavier. Rubbing her eyes that were almost unable to open, Monica didn't care about the small change. She quickly relieved herself and ran out of the bathroom to her bed. When she entered the cover, she felt the temperature was much lower as she had no choice but to wrap herself up tightly in layers. It didn't take long for her to fall asleep again. That's such a random ass POV change. Just Monica had to wake up and go pee and then went back to bed. Okay, about 15 minutes later, the patrolling Billies rubbed his hands. Oh, it's just everybody in Utopia. What are they doing tonight? About 15 minutes later, the patrolling Billies rubbed his hands and turned towards the street where the police station was. He was about to hand over duties with his colleagues. Suddenly, his body froze in the alley. The black and dense spirit body threads on his body peeled off at the same time as he floated upwards. A pruned and exquisite paper figurine landed and connected the spirit body threads. What the fuck? Quickly turning into another Billy's. A pruned and exquisite paper figurine landed and connected to the spirit body threads, quickly turning. Why did we make another Billy's? At the same time, a torrent of mixed knowledge surged over and reassembled him into a man wearing gorgeous clothes with long chestnut hair. The man had blue eyes, a high nose bridge, and thin lips. It was Rizzo Gustave Sequence 1 historical projection. Whoa. Right on the heels of that, the projection reached out and sucked all the information surrounding into its palm, forming an illusionary ball of light. This information included all the details that involved Billy's, and the next second, Roselle Gustav historical projection forged a piece of information that was completely normal, allowing it to follow the spirit body threads connected to the paper figurine to St. Ariana Cathedral. What's happening? And the municipal square moving straight under the cathedral after this. I'm sorry, are we digesting our potion? Is this Klein doing something, or is this Amon doing something? After this series of actions, another torrent of information surged in midair with Roselle's, or is it like Garatul? Or they're like, no, it can't be Amon. It has to be Zaratul, because that's the only. Oh, wait a second. Amon snuck in Zaratul. And the next, because it wouldn't make sense to make another fucking paper figurine. Like, Amon wouldn't be able to do that. It'd have to be another seer. And the next second, Roselle Gustav. Oh, yeah, and it makes sense because Zaratul was the one that made Roselle Gustav projections in the past. And the next second, Roselle Gustav historical projection forged a piece of information and was completely normal, allowing it to follow the spare body threads connecting it to the paper figurine to St. Ariana Cathedral in the municipal square, moving straight underground of the cathedral. Oh shit, if it's him, cook or cooked, if it is Zaratul, that means shit's gonna go down. After this series of actions, another torrent of information surged in midair. With Roselle's help, they reformed into 3 figures. 3 figures? Zaratul was ever to make 3 historical projections. A middle-aged man wearing a black robe, a hooded with a long, thick white beard. Another was draped in a cloak, had black hair, blue eyes, and a rather squared face. He was a middle-aged man with a dignified bearing. One of the trees, there was a huge tree that seemed to be drenched with petroleum. On the 3, there was arms. Wait. On the tree, there were arms with all sorts of strange protrudings. Oh shit, I just read it. It is fucking Zaratul. Oh shit, it is him. Fucking shit, I skipped the line. On the tree, there were arms with all sorts of strange protruding objects that rolled with bloodlust eyes. They were the leader of the secret order Zaratul. Holy shit, Zaratul and Amon are here. Lowen's protector, the first King Williams Augustus' first historical projection, a historical projection of abomination Suwa. Oh, after making the necessary preparations, Zaratul used the location provided by the historical projection to sneak into Utopia. He didn't waste any time. He reached out with his right hand and used the law of convergence beyond characteristics to suck out the worm of spirits in Billy's. Oh. Elsewhere, the palm of Abomination Soul's historical projection made an ugly doll the size of a palm appear. The doll was wet and sticky. It had no eyes, ears, or nose. It only had a pinhole-like mouth that emitted a sucked grayish-white fog. As the worm of spirit and the doll approached, the black and white eyeballs that rolled out of Sua's tree trunk looked at them at the same time. Why the fuck is Sua a tree? Suddenly, the worms of spirit fused with the ugly doll, causing it to distort and squirm, growing out eyes, nose, and ears, making it look like Klein Moretti. I'm sorry, what the fuck? We just made a Klein Moretti doll? At this point, Zaratul no longer did any concealment, nor could he do so. He took out a black shroud and abruptly wrapped Klein's doll up. All the marionettes spared by thirst in Utopia were severed. Oh, we're severing the connection. All the oh, wait, did we disrupt his ritual? All the marionettes spared by thirst in Utopia were severed at the same time. They were unable to connect to the true body. This wasn't because there was something wrong with them, but the true body was isolated from them. So if they're isolated and concealed, there's no connection. All of a sudden, the duty personnel in the police station, tenants in the hotels, tracing the thieves in the cell, Anderson in another apartment, Alazu, and the other citizens all stopped breathing and turned stiff. Oh, that's so creepy. Regardless of whether they were sleeping or doing something else, it was as if a pause button had been pressed. Klein, who was at the bottom of the St. Ariana Cathedral, suddenly woke up. He knew that an accident had happened. He didn't hesitate. With any thought, he returned to the Fairy Castle. With the level and strength of a Kings of Angels, he was able to resist the enemies that had shown or had yet to show themselves. This is getting hype. This was the best choice in the current situation. Even if he wasn't able to protect his true body, Klein still had a chance to revive. Revive? At that moment, his floating consciousness touched the invisible dark barrier, making it difficult to penetrate it and enter Sephir Castle. This, Klein's heart tightened, believing that the enemy might be more troublesome than he had imagined. Few high-level existences knew he could return to Sephir Castle with a thought. And the next second, the petroleum-slathered tree had arrived above St. Ariana Cathedral. In addition, a deep, dignified voice resounded. Wandering is... Oh, we're doing this again? Wandering is prohibited here. Teleportation is prohibited here. Klein wasn't led by his emotions. Seeing that he couldn't return to Silver Castle at that moment, he immediately changed his strategy and leaped towards the fog of history. The moment the grayish-white fog entered his eyes, it turned into a whirlpool formed by countless transparent maggots. The vortex extended out slippery tentacles covered with strange patterns. Unlike previously, the vortex emitted a powerful suction force, causing Klein's figure to speed up and be entangled by countless tentacles. Law of Bionic Characteristics Convergence. The law of Bionic Characteristics Convergence between angels. A subtle beam of light flashed at Klein, who was firmly controlling by Zarathul's mythical creature form, turning into a paper figurine. This was an angel-level application of paper figurine substitutes, as well as the help of grafting. So we're good. It's not GG. Although Klein couldn't return to his fairy castle, he could influence the worms of spirits above the great fog, allowing them to use the curtain to provide help. After dodging Zarathul's fatal blow, Klein ran into the fog of history and fled towards the former metropolis from a time before the first epoch. At this moment, many marionettes who had been dead for a long time in Utopia rapidly decayed from losing spirit. Oh, they decay? Rapidly decay from losing the spirit body threads, maintaining them. Their limbs dropped to the ground and mutated because of their bionic characteristics. The latter transformed into different monsters, one far more terrifying than the imaginable. Some swallowed their heads, others was left only squirming flesh, while others grew dense eyes. Soon Klein ran into the old metropolis situated inside of the fog of history. To him, this was a safe room that couldn't be trusted. This was because only a scholar of yore who was a human from before history could enter. Without any hesitation, Klein habitually surveyed the area and began praying to the Evernight goddess in the Stack City. Oof, a faint sound rang as the ancient wooden stake with traces and blood penetrated Klein's heart from behind. A figure faced into existence behind him. It was a cold-looking man wearing a half-top hat and a black trench coat. German Sparrow. Oh, shit! Music change! Why are we playing Betrayal? Without any hesitation, Klein habitually surveyed the area and began praying to the Evernight goddess in the Stack City. Oof. A faint sound rang out as an ancient wooden stack with traces of blood penetrated Klein's... Whoa! I read that way too quickly! Whoa! It's a cliffhanger stream! I read that way too fast! I didn't realize I read heart! A faint sound rang out as an ancient wooden stake with traces of blood penetrated Klein's heart from behind. Why are we playing Betrayal? Did somebody betray him? A figure phased into existence behind him. This is way too loud. It was a cold-looking man wearing a half-top hat and a black trench coat. German Sparrow stabbed Klein? Fuck does that mean? Klein's pupils dilated as a crazy adventurer said in a deep voice, "Adam has given me humanity." Whoa! Whoa, 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 whoa! Adam has given me humanity. Wait, did Adam conjure a German Sparrow marionette and then gave it humanity? Wait, how the fuck does that make how the fuck does that make any sense? Wait, how the fuck does that make any sense? I can't read more. I gotta go. I do gotta go. That's why I was kind of reading a little bit fast today. I do gotta go. And now, no. We're ending now. We're ending now. We can't continue. Crazy ass cliffhanger. I'm gonna edge you guys just for like a few hours. I'm gonna edge you guys for like half a day. Wait, what? I don't get it. So Klein wakes up. He prays to the Evernight goddess. And then a fucking wooden stake penetrates. Oh shit, that was his last revive. Was that his last revive? So Klein's last revive has been used, right? Oh my god. So when he dies at the end of volume 8, he doesn't have any more revives. What the fuck does that mean? So Klein his last revive has been used. Adam is a spectator. He can give humanity to virtual personas, whatever. Bruh, he changed the song. I can't. Do I? Well, I just wanted to play this one for now. Well, you know what? We should keep it playing. We can keep it playing. That makes sense. Wait, hold on. This makes sense. Yeah, we'll keep it playing. Wait, so wait. So Adam, I assume create. I don't get how we have another German Sparrow though. That's the only thing I don't get. I don't get how there's another German Sparrow. No, we're reading more than 5 chapters tomorrow. We're reading 45 to 54. We're finishing the volume. We're finishing volume 7. I don't get it though. Where the fuck did this German Sparrow come from? You'll find out. There has to be something. Oh, man. Then who the fuck is Adam then? Oh, shit. Adam's humanity was given to him? Is that what that is? Well, yeah, tomorrow we're reading 45 to 53. Oh, it's going to be a good day tomorrow. And then we fucking read all of Volume 8 in one day. Crazy. This weird. I read your comments so quickly on Hinge. I think that was a troll. I believe that's a troll. Adam is Ellie. Was it Ellie? I don't get it. I don't understand how the... Like, I understand the part where... Oh, wait a sec. I know what the fuck happened. I think I know what happened. Amon was able to take one of Klein's marionettes in the past when we brought him to the Forsaken Lands of Gods, and he's like, you should never leave evidence, or you should never leave your marionettes behind. I guess because Amon entered Utopia, he probably took one of his marionettes, and I guess he errored it into turning into Gurman. And then Adam, because Adam and Amon are bros, I guess they teamed up here temporarily to stab Klein in the heart. Yeah, I think. I mean, Adam and Amon are bros. I just like, I don't know what to think about Amon and Adam. Is that weird? Is it weird for me to say that? I still don't know how to feel about them because I don't know their fucking motives. Like, it's so weird. The way I understand it is your easy geeky identity tries to kill your real identity. That is so weird. You will have your answer tomorrow. Damn. All right. All right. Not only will I know tomorrow, I will also know the ending of Volume 8 tomorrow. Peace. Have an amazing day.